Bad boy.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You've tuned in live to the flyest sports and entertainment podcast in all the land. This is Stat Lines Matter. I'm your host, Mark Stewart, and like always, I ask you quickly to like, subscribe, and get the notifications on our YouTube channel. We're at Stat Lines Matter across all platforms: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Fanbase, all of that, and Facebook. And most importantly, go get our podcast anywhere you get podcasts, which is Apple Music or Spotify or any other places. I am here with my partner in crime, as always, Mr. Rob Hunter Jr. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing excellent. Listen, we have a lot to cover today, so let's get into one of the things I want to cover quickly before we get into our football discussion, because we're in football season, so a lot of that dominates. What's going around the internet, I guess it's kind of gone viral, is a couple of videos of young youth basketball players at tournaments. And I've seen a couple of different ones at this point of young guys sort of, to me, acting like the big version of them, the NBA guys, with trash talking and a lot of disrespect of the opponent, from kids as young as look like 10 and under. And then I saw another kid who was maybe like 14, like bounce a ball off a guy's head in game action. And the question that I have for you and for our audience, are we losing sportsmanship in youth sports? And should it be there? I saw one kid jaw-jacking with either a parent or a coach, but they were in the stands. They weren't on the sidelines. And I'm like, the kid could have been no more than 13. I'm like, why are you talking to anyone in the stands? But we're in this place, and because you're kind of part of that world, I wanted to get your take on it. On, are we losing sportsmanship in youth sports, and should we value it at all?
Well, all I can speak for is my experience.
Did you see the viral videos?
I saw the one that you sent me.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of the other ones.
That's specifically what I'm referring to. What was your take on that before you get into what your experience is?
It's been well, my take on it is going to be within the context of my experience. And basically those kids, outside of, anything physical happening, but normally those kids who have that kind of energy are the kids who generally are moving up the ranks. Smack talk is something that's very common from what I see in the gyms, particularly and I've started out in the suburban lane, which there's basically hardly any, but the more competitive you get, that stuff gets ratcheted up some, and normally it ends in all in good fun, they after the smack talk is over, they shake hands and they leave. But you find that the kids who have a more of a sense of self, or that dog, you see that they're the ones who are generally either meeting that energy and beating that energy. So speaking from someone who's just basically seen what the better teams look like, they generally have those smoky attitudes. They don't back down from it. They bring the smoke, and they normally end up, the better teams, they normally end up being the players that are ranked. Not that you can't do it another way, but I'm just saying based off of what I've seen.
You said good fun. If your son plays, if he's D'ing up a guy and the guy bounces the ball off his forehead, is that good fun?
He better, is it
good fun in terms of how your son would respond and how you would want your son to respond? Is it just like, hey, bounce the ball off my head is good fun?
I think that's more of a rhetorical question, but I think.
Well, I'm asking because you said most of it ends and it's looked at as good fun. Is that good fun?
So if my son ain't playing good enough defense to defend somebody bouncing the ball off his head, that's on him.
Right, but what I'm saying is, what's your expectation of what his response should be?
He better lock him down. Tight defense after that. Okay, game on.
So him bouncing a ball off your son's head, that's just part of the game in your view. Oh, that's not out of bounds.
I think that my son better play better defense, period.
But I'm talking about the action. He's playing defense. He's in the defensive stand. The guy's not gone anywhere. He just bounced the ball off his head.
Then his defense ain't good enough. If you feel comfortable enough to bounce a ball off another player's head, then he ain't playing good enough.
So in your view, it's just part of the game.
No, it's not part of the game. You better play better defense. Obviously, you're not doing something enough to garner his respect where he is not willing to do that.
But you do realize, and I guess what I'm going for here is, we all watch basketball. We watch it at the pro level. We watch it at the college level. I've never seen anybody in game action bounce a ball off of somebody's head.
And neither have I.
It's not part of the game.
So I think that's probably more of an aberration. I think that maybe if we start
but we
seeing
see it in the street.
Yeah, because that's street ball. It's
right,
entertainment.
But we see
a lot of things with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right.
All of those.
But this was now, I don't think this kid was even 13 or 14 years old. And he did this in-game action in an AAU tournament. And to my surprise, nobody said anything. Like, the ref didn't stop play. Nobody, coach said anything. He just bounced the ball, and the kids was like, ooh, ah. But I was like, this is not part of the game. And the fact that no one said anything affirmed the behavior, which bothered me.
Well, I think, like I said, I think that if that's my son, he better play better defense. I mean, period. Point blank.
Okay, so if he plays better defense and then takes it off the head, you cool with that?
But let's flip it. Let's flip it, though. I would not want my son bouncing the ball off of somebody's head.
Right.
Like, because
I think you're a reasonable person.
Well, also, I'm like, man, bust his ass. Period.
Exactly.
Like, what are we doing? Like, why are you doing that? Like, that's
what goes back to my original question. It's not part of the game, and it wasn't, are we losing sportsmanship? Because bouncing the ball off somebody's head is like something else.
Well, correct. But like I said, unless, like, I've never seen that before. I haven't seen that clip. So I think that I wouldn't use that as, oh, are we losing sports? Or I would, because there are a lot of isolated things that happen during a game that you can get a clip of and go, oh, are we losing sports? I think that if that starts to become a little bit of an epidemic, then maybe, but hopefully.
Well, I think the indicator that it is an epidemic is this had to be a 10 and under league, 10 and under game, maybe 12. And first of all, the kids are mic'd up. So why are you miking a 10 or 12-year-old for social media? Because I don't want to hear anything that a 12-year-old has to say or a 10-year-old has to say ever, let alone in the context of a game. If you're playing a game, play the game. The second thing is, you got somebody who's under 5 feet telling someone else who's under 5 feet they're too small. Oh, you too small, you too small. And then you had that same kid throwing the ball at another player who was down, and then his teammate came and threw the ball at him. It's almost like whoever put the mic on them so that they can present that behavior wide so it could go viral. And it worked. But what does that say about youth sports? And what does that say about the people who we put in charge? Because I think kids, I heard someone say, that's like, it's cosplay for little kids. It's NBA cosplay. They're pretending the little kid, he's dressed like John Morant. He's talking shit like John Morant. But some of that, the coaches either curtail or they support. And in this particular situation, if somebody put a mic pack on a kid, they're obviously supporting this behavior. And I think that's like, especially at their age, if you're in high school, that's different. Because now you know who's who, right? You know who the prospect is. So some of that stuff kind of sorts itself out. Like, whoever 10 and under, like, we don't know how that's going to turn out, because that little kid may grow 6 more inches, and if there's a 6'5" kid who can do the same thing he can at 5'8", he's no longer a prospect in exchange to the kid who's 6'5", right?
Right.
So teaching him and cultivating that dog, isn't what determines whether you a dog or not is your play, not your mouth?
Sometimes. I think generally that
you can't talk your way into a scholarship.
Yeah, but that kind of talk is not cultivated by adults. That happens on the playground. That happens in gyms. That happens, amongst yourselves in your own basically ecosystem. It's a Lord of the Flies type of atmosphere when you're on the court. And generally the kids who show the most, that type of energy, the most aggressive energy, generally are the ones who make it through. So, and generally kids who cower to that, because again, it's just going off of what I've seen. Those are the ones who their skill doesn't have an opportunity to flourish because they're folding under that type of pressure. And it's best to be able to handle that early, as opposed to, cowering from it or anything like. I think that you got to know. So for instance, when you're at that level and you're starting to progress, you're starting to go up the ranks. It's not as uncommon, but it's not as unexpected. I showed my wife the footage and she was like, we both like, that's how it is, because that's what we've seen. Yeah. And as they get older, the irony though is you see that because they are mimicking what they believe they see. But you don't see it as much because they start to mature. So you do see more. You see smack talk, but
it starts to sort itself out, because here's what. Not to cut you off, but let me interject this. If you've ever competed in sports at any level of real competition, there's nothing anyone's gonna say that intimidates you. What will intimidate you if you're a player is a guy who's better. If a guy's across from you and you can't guard him, it's nothing he can say, it's what he can do. And if he can't do it, he can't talk his way into it.
The mental
aspect.
If
I'm scoring on you, you can't talk. You're not going to talk me out of my scoring.
It's just you don't find most guys ain't going to Kawhi Leonard their way to most players. You don't find that many players that are like that. Most players, particularly at the youth level that are good, they're generally a little bit more demonstrative. They're generally a little bit more animated. Every now and then you'll find a guy who has, some stoic personality, but generally, especially down here and in Chicago, the Mean Streets program up there, those guys are talking. Those guys are letting you know from the moment they enter the gym who they are, what they're about to do to you, and they let you know that as they're leaving. And conversely speaking, the loser is still talking too. So it's
but I think it is hard to explain without the context of the video. But if we're competing and I'm getting at you and you're getting at me and we're talking, that's part of the game. Always has been. Football too. What I saw in the video, they were shooting free throws. They were on the line, and the kids, you too small. You too small to shoot a free throw?
That was awesome.
That was ridiculous. And I thought that kid was being
awesome.
And it's hard for me to blame a kid.
He was the smallest kid. So he had that dog, and we you too small.
He didn't have a dog in him at all.
He was 4'2". He was like, you soft, bro. He's like, do something about it. It was like, I loved all of that.
You had one kid who was calling another kid. You asked, but then the kids, they show him shooting a 3-pointer with terrible form, and I'm thinking to myself, you should be working on the fundamentals of your game instead of talking. You're talking too much. And you're not going to talk your way into competitive situations. You can, if you have the game, if you're Kevin Durant, if you're LeBron James, and obviously we're talking at the highest level, you're talking to and you're backing up a certain thing about what your game is. What I saw from these kids, because there was very little highlights of their play. Most of the highlights was of them talking. So you can't talk your way into a good play. I didn't see many good plays from those guys. I saw talking and feeble attempts at intimidating their opponent, and all of it just looked like bad sportsmanship to me. And I blame the coaches and I blame the handlers, and I thought it was in poor taste. And I don't think that the NBA is full, in major college basketball is not full of that. When you look up and down a roster, I'll close with this and you can have the last word. You look up and down the roster, there's all types of players that make up a college roster and an NBA roster. You have guys that are hit the boards and play defense, guys that are rim protectors. You have guys that are 3-and-D guys. You have guys that bring the ball up and are distributors. Not everybody is the lead dog. And I think sometimes in coaching, whether it's youth or whatever, is to be able to sell a team concept and understand that how we win might require people to adjust or change their roles. If everybody's out here just mimicking the lead dog, yes, that'll get you to a place, but I can safely say, just looking at numbers, probably none of the kids in that video will end up in the league. Probably, because the numbers say so. The probability says that. So teaching them how to be like the 1% instead of like the larger is, I think, problematic and can hurt them in general.
You can have the last word. I mean, Georgia's the number one state in the United States for producing Division I basketball talent per capita. And that's just the energy that you see from around the state. Will they be pros? Maybe not, but is the probability higher than any other place in the country that they'll play Division I basketball? Yes, it is. And that's just what the numbers say. If you look up and down, yes, NBA roster, you look at Patrick Beverly, you look at Devin Booker, you look at LeBron James, all these guys are smoky guys, all of them.
Yeah.
And so Trae Young, I mean, Steph Curry, you see all of these guys are
maybe
right
the top
here
25 guys in a league with 1,500 guys.
But I mean, they're right here with it.
Of course, and I think because they have the games to back it up, their games are fully evolved.
But that didn't just start. Well, and also, but to your point, I think it reduces just because they're more mature. They're adults.
And you get to a point where you go, I can't talk to Dev Book because his game is like, you can talk, but it's at your own peril. Because at the end of the day, what's going to intimidate him is you just dropping jump shots in his chest.
Wait a minute. Who was that in the playoff game that was talking to Doncic from the Suns? Was it Booker? And he ended up winning, and they won the next two games and dispatching them full.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, what ultimately will win out is a skill set.
Well, I mean, because Doncic went ahead but I mean, Doncic, he come from over there.
Because if it was just smoke, then Pat Beverly would be a top 10 player.
Well, no, but you have to have, I think you have to have that in you in order to get there. When you see, I don't want to get too personal, but I'll just say I wish I had a little bit more of that in my camp. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think it's about the game. And I also think people can, I don't confuse competitiveness with talking. You don't have to talk a lot to be competitive. There's a lot of guys that will compete and will go from one end to the other for 48 minutes that don't have to do a lot of talking. And then when they do, it doesn't have to be demonstrative, and it doesn't have to be, we hear all these stories right now. It's just two guys that we get these stories about all the time. It's Larry Bird, and now posthumously is Kobe. And people say, tell these stories, but Larry talks shit. Everybody says he's the biggest shit talker. Dominique Wilkins told me personally and gave me stories for like an hour about like shit that Larry talked. But Larry was never doing this, and like it was like, I'm in your ear. Because you can't stop the things I'm going to do. My game is better than yours, and I'm going to get in your ear about it. But it was not this sort of like outward display of me trying to either intimidate you or humiliate you, and I think it's disrespect again. Like, there's ways to talk. Mike would do it, would he get in your ear and be like, man, I'm going off. We hear the story.
But
now.
Is that the adult version of smack talk, though? I mean,
I don't know, children. Because now we seeing it. Well, because the first time I ever saw you too small was in the NBA, and now I'm seeing a nigga that's too small telling another nigga that's too small that he's too small.
The baby? Westbrook.
Yeah.
We're saying that Lillard was too little.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So we saw it at the NBA level, and now it's gone down. So anyways, I'm going to keep an eye on that.
But was a big talk. I remember when we first started playing pickup, he was like, why are you talking so much, Rob?
I think it's some Southern. I'm a Midwestern guy. I think it's some Southern stuff. Like, I was like, man, be quiet and guard your man. Guard your guy.
I'm in 8 in a row. Like, I'm going to warm your ass up.
Anyway, so sticking with the NBA for a little bit, I wanted to have a little bit of an update on the Udoka. Udoka. I'm going to get this man's name right.
Is it O or U? I don't know. I thought you may have figured it out by now.
I haven't. Anyway,
Emmy.
The former coach, suspended coach of the Celtics, who's suspended. There's been a couple new things that came out since we talked about this, and I just wanted to give our listeners a brief update. One of the things that we figured out is that the relationship was with someone who worked for the organization and booked travel. She was the travel and logistics coordinator for the team, and at times booked Nia Long, his girls, travel.
Yes.
I don't even know what part of the game that is. The other thing I found out is that the players found out with the public. They found out when we all found out. There was no sort of sit down with the team, coach is going to be suspended because guys were, the teams hadn't come together yet because yesterday was media day. This week was media day. So guys were still dispersed. So guys were finding out the way they found out. And then one sort of interesting thing, because people are weighing in, you had Matt Barnes from the All the Smoke podcast. Initially, he had a response. Then he came back and sort of retracted his response because through his inside information, he got additional stuff and stuff that's starting to trickle out. Some of the stuff that's unsubstantiated. So we're not going to get too deep into what we heard. What we do know is it was someone who worked in travel and logistics and had contact with Nia Long's wife. I mean, with his fiance, and
was married to another Boston Celtics executive who happened to find out on the ring alarm.
Yeah,
and we was about to get ring, but now we not getting that. Fact,
you gonna try some other security?
I'm gonna go home and uninstall the doorbell we got.
Yo.
I don't want just go back to the knock. What's that thing used to bang? The clang clang clang.
Yeah, the knocker.
And that, so what's even more add insult to, I guess, injury, if you will. So this was found out roughly 2 months ago.
Right, back in the summer. Yeah,
and they just continued to let this young lady proceed with the actual permanent transition with Nia Long moving to Boston.
Yeah, because they were under investigation.
But they found out. I mean, was to get the details, but the actual infraction was pretty much, they at least concluded that. Now the circumstances surrounding it, obviously required the investigation. But I just think from I'm a perspective, like, how do you continue to let this young lady help your fiance when everybody know but her? Because everybody was aware that the investigation was going on.
Were they?
Well, I read 3 articles on it, and everybody.
Were the principals?
Yes, the principals. So the staffer knew. Obviously, Jaime knew.
So the
Celtics, everybody knew that the investigation was on.
That part I did not know.
Yes, and they continued to allow the staffer to help Miss Long with the transition, which is bugging me out.
Do you think that he thought maybe they would investigate? You think he thought he had covered his tracks or something along that line?
I think that, on some level, he had to think that this was just going to be handled internally and it wasn't going to come out, or he had hoped. You're just hoping at that point, and because. Why blow up the whole thing if we can just keep this?
Yeah, let's just wait till they show their hand.
And I think that it was maybe a possibility. Maybe it was never a possibility, because who blew the whistle was the dadgum husband. Because he found out off the ring, thanks Shaq. Yeah. You know what I mean? I guess.
And I think, is Nas in that too? I think Nas.
I think Nas was Uber. Was he ring too?
I think Nas.
Hey, them boys made some really timely key. Who they got advising them?
They in the right. They're in the right room. They're in the right rooms.
But yeah, so so when what Matt Barnes was saying, he when he brought up his when he posted his retraction, he said that it's a lot messier than he ever could have thought.
Yeah.
So that's just the little bit that we know. So the fact that I guess what he got was probably obviously the gory details,
right?
Which I don't even want to know. I just want it to just be next season for Jaime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think he getting that job back.
Me neither. Yeah. Because I thought about that. That was interesting.
Coaching.
No, you brought that up on our fan base call, which will happen Friday at 9:30.
Yeah.
But you brought that up on the call, and I never considered that they wouldn't bring him back. But I don't know how you can.
Yeah.
Because
it's egregious.
Well, is the executive still there? Is the wife still there? Do they move on? How do you bring him back? Because somebody got to leave.
Yeah, because the optics are terrible if you bring him back.
So yeah, I mean I had never but that's why you get paid, because you thinking ahead. I was like, man, this messed up. You were like, I don't know if they bring him back. I was like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what comes out, I don't even know if he coaches again.
Again?
Yeah,
like in the league?
Yeah. Because think about it like this. If we find out that any of it was any part of it, like when they say it's more messy, right?
Yes.
If any part of that is unwanted or unwarranted advances, no team is touching him in the Me Too.
Yeah, if it's any
We're in the Me Too
unwanted,
moment.
and they said like a couple days ago that he made some comments that weren't wanted
Yeah.
or unwanted.
So like, yeah, like depending on what comes out and what the investigation shows, like he's literally jeopardized his career. So let's talk a little bit about Brett Favre. You know, in Twitter world and places where people discuss things and ideas, there's a prevailing thought that there's a major scandal going on in the fine state of Mississippi, and I say that facetiously, in that ESPN, who is the worldwide leader, and I'm comfortable calling them out on this, is not covering this story with any sense of urgency, if at all, when you consider who's involved, the amount of money, and how far it goes up in the state government. And unless you've been under a rock, let me briefly go back and bring you up. There is an investigation and a lawsuit put up by the state of Mississippi against a collection of individuals, including Brett Favre, for misappropriating funds that were allocated to their welfare system. Favre was using his influence as a major player in the state of Mississippi to influence government officials to build new facilities at the University of Southern Mississippi, where he went and where his daughter was going to go to play volleyball.
And his nephew, Dylan. And
I don't think Dylan was playing volleyball, but he's there, the family's there, they got a legacy at that university. And so he wanted his daughter, like all of us would, to be able to play in a first-rate facility. So instead of raising money or doing what people do, he called his...
Or making a donation.
Or making a donation.
Style.
Yeah.
$10 million.
He went to... the former governor, Phil Bryant.
He was the current at the time.
Current at the time, former now, Phil Bryant, and said, "Hey, let's get some dollars put forward," and started to do that. What's coming out now is that he wasn't sort of innocently asking; that he was aware of when the heat started to come, that it was problematic, and that we should pull up, and he continued to push forward. So he's not going to be able to claim ignorance on this.
No, he
Brett
won't.
Favre's in trouble.
He won't be able to claim negligence, basically due to the old text messages.
Yeah.
But, this story is so layered, but it's one that's familiar with, the establishment in this country and the have-nots, basically using their systemic advantages, if you will, to create opportunities and advantages and wealth and all the things that they enjoy. Is basically the have and have-nots. And the have-nots, their political voice basically is what it boils down. Their political and their economic voice is so small that they generally depend on, meaning the haves depend on the fact that they don't have those things. They don't have that. They won't be able to raise enough awareness to create. To bring attention to the injustice.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is I was thinking, I was like, $5 million for a volleyball? They can't just use the gym? Like, I was in my mind, I like $5 million. Like, everywhere I went, you just roll a volleyball net out there and put some extra seating, and then that's the court. I didn't know they had volleyball courts.
Yeah, the bigger programs do.
$5 million. There must be a hell of a program.
Yeah.
But this is, so we talked about this again on Fan Base on Friday at 9:30. And I'd said that this probably won't rise to the level that it actually should. Doing a little bit more research, the new governor, Tate Reeves, has since
good old Tate
fired the attorney that they brought in to do the investigation without cause. And had him before that remove the subpoena for Southern Miss and the communications for the the Southern Miss Foundation, which is where the money was routed to via a lease, the $5 million, had them remove that from the investigation because the people in the foundation are mostly Tate Reeves supporters. So the communication of the records have been, the case is being still brought forward.
Yeah,
but that part has been removed. So now there's now scuttlebutt saying that Tate needs to be involved in the investigation. The new governor, so the other governor gone.
Yeah.
And
good old Tate.
And now Tate Reeves, Phil Bryant was the original governor.
Yeah.
So this is
Mississippi is going Mississippi.
Man, Mississippi, and and I was thinking Favre got got $8 million, right? He got $5.
They say it might be more when it's all said and done.
It was more, but $5 million for the facility, $2 million for a biotech company, and then $1 million that he was going to have basically, or did have, routed to him in the form of appearance fees. No-show appearance fees that he was supposed to route to Southern Mississippi. This is, and so then you think about, okay, so Phil Bryant had, the irony in this whole thing, had the guy that was in charge of the Temporary Assistance Fund fired for fraud, right? Fired him for fraud. Phil Bryant put in his person, Nancy New, who just pleaded guilty to the biggest fraud scandal, this was involved in the biggest public fraud scandal in the history of Mississippi. $77 million. This woman was in charge of public funds out of the purview of Public Watch. She was in charge of $24 million in the form of a grant, of which the $8 million came to, which is the $8 million
came from that. This is particularly sad because I believe, and I might have my stats a little bit wrong, but I believe Mississippi is the poorest state in the union, or like in the bottom 5.
I thought $8 million would be able to cure their hunger situation forever.
Yeah, I mean, this is already a poor state.
They got like 3 million people there.
And they were drawing the money from the poorest people in the poorest state. And we wonder why, we talk about schools and we talk, when people talk about systemic racism, this is how it happens. And when you have corrupt people running it and you have guys that are entitled, because that's some real entitlement. Like, look, everyone knows I'll do anything for my kids, and I'll make calls. I make calls for other people's kids. When you get influence, you use it. But you have to use it in the context of understanding that it can't be at the expense of others. And once he realized or was told, like, yo, we might need to pull up, and you keep going, to me, now it's all bets are off. And I heard someone say this, I saw it on Twitter, and it said something to the effect of, we heard more about Jameis Winston stealing crab legs than we've heard about Brett Favre stealing $8 million from the poorest people in the poorest state.
And not the irony, but you think about, this is a man who made $140 million just in contract money.
Yeah, I was gonna say just football stuff.
Just football money. Just football money. And you are stealing from poor people. You made $140 million. We're not talking about any of the copper, whatever that thing is, the copper sock.
Or the Wrangler jeans.
The trucks.
F-150 or whatever he does. You're doing. Dodge, tough.
And so there was he is affiliated, his foundation is affiliated with another one that's called Hope Haven. Hope Haven helps sexually abused children. So they talked to Hope Haven, the director from Hope Haven, and he said that, they normally give us $10,000 a year, and we really depend on that money to help us with these victims. So we still hope to be able to get that money from the Favre Foundation again this year. It really gives you an idea of how ridiculous Favre is. He's stealing millions for a volleyball court, but is giving only $10,000 to real victims.
Yeah.
He's putting together plays for a volleyball court for his daughter. He's putting together major jugs for that. But you're giving away how much? You're donating how much to real victims? It's it is really, it really just it takes you, it makes you pause for a second and go, man, what world are these people living in? Like, how do you resolve that? Like, at least you can go, okay, he give me $10,000, Brett.
Yeah, there's a lot of people right now that are really quiet about something they should be speaking out on. And I think, to me, this is not an issue of politics. But let's call a spade a spade. This is a ruby red state. This is ruby red governing. And
they're last in education.
Yeah, they're last in education, but not where their kids go to school, but in Jackson where where the water's brown, and it's a bunch of bullshit going on there, and not enough people are talking about this the way people weren't talking about the water in Flint and the problems. We just turn ourselves away, and I don't think we should turn ourselves away here at statlinesmatter. We're going to keep an eye on this story. We're going to give you updates. Like Rob alluded to, we're going to actually devote our entire conversation Friday in the audio room on Fanbase to this subject. So if you want to delve deeper into this subject with us, we're going to be on the Fanbase app Friday at 9:30 a.m. discussing the Brett Favre situation more in depth.
Tough, man. Brad Piggott, the attorney, said that people that got fired said that people are going to go to jail behind this.
Well, there's people already pleading guilty, and but the question just becomes, I heard Shannon Sharp say, he said when black and brown people defraud the government on an EBT card for $300 or $400, they're prosecuting people to the full extent of the law when people are defrauding it to eat and to put food on their tables. And this, when you talk about volleyball courts and all that kind of stuff, and $8 million and maybe more, and corruption that goes all the way up to two governors' mansions or two governors' houses, it's ridiculous and it pisses me off. Anyway, let's discuss a little bit of football before we get out of here, because we got to discuss football. Before we get into it, again, I invite you to join us Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central for our Fantasy Football Weekly show presented by SLM, where we'll be breaking down some of these games from a fantasy perspective. So you'll get a little bit more in-depth fantasy discussion at that time, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be breaking it down. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit, because the season, we're 3 games in. We're about to play our 4th game. We're starting to get a little bit of a read on some of the teams, but there's been some surprises, and there's been some teams that are disappointed. What's your early take in terms of surprises, disappointments, based on what you thought coming in?
Well, for me, the biggest surprise, hands down, for me, is the Jaguars. Mm-hmm. They're number 1 in point differential, just coming off a big road win. I understand that the Chargers are battling a lot of injuries, but you wouldn't have, at least coming into the season, necessarily foresaw them being number 1 in point differential.
Right.
Now, a lot of that obviously has to do with the game they played a week ago against the Colts, and they didn't score any points, but they still held Justin Herbert and Eckler and Mike Williams to 10 points.
Yeah. Which is something nobody's really done
on the road.
Yeah.
So that will probably be one of the biggest surprises. Maybe the second. Maybe this one should have been first. But the way that Geno Smith's been playing has been a big surprise. I watched that game. First time I probably watched a Falcon game from beginning to end, because I had fantasy implications. But that's neither here nor there. And watching Geno Smith deliver the ball, he made a crucial turnover to actually seal the win for the Falcons. But I think, Geno's looking like who the Jets drafted him to be. That's probably my 2 biggest surprises. And my disappointment is, and I said it on a quick hit, is the fact that Lamar's contract is just another week, another show of pure awesome concentrate. Yeah. Another 100 yards rushing. Yeah. Another 3-4 touchdowns passing. Like, y'all realize the price is going up.
Well, but in fairness to them, because if I'm the team. I'm just calling him up going, whatever you want, we'll give you. But he said, I'm not negotiating during the year.
Right. But you can go in there and just slap down a fully guaranteed deal and just whatever Deshaun got, beat that by like a few million.
Yeah.
And it's over with. I would just go slap it down.
And this is not me. I don't have the stats up, but he leads in touchdown passes, quarterback rating, I believe yards, and he's 4th in rushing.
I did not know he was 4th in rushing.
Not among quarterbacks.
Yeah, you drive that
in rushing
with Flowers,
with everybody,
and an apology letter on there and be like that was totally our fault. Have Ozzie do it. Ozzie knew and Ray Lewis.
Yeah, and they're not even part of it. For me, J-Bill was one of my surprises. The Dolphins. I'm not going to say they were my surprise because I felt like this team had been turning the corner even under Brian Flores. I think what surprised me about the Dolphins is how quickly they've adjusted to the offensive system and how explosive they become early. I figured they would get there at some point. I didn't think we'd see it in week 2, in week 3.
Well, in week 3, I mean, they were outgained, out first down, they had time of possession, they lost. That was a fluky win for them.
You think it was fluky? I actually think
because you got outplayed in basically every facet of the game.
I don't think
for the one that counted the
game?
most. I watched most of it. Yeah.
I watched the game. I don't think they got outplayed at all. I think they frustrated the hell out of Josh Allen. You know, he threw 63 passes to get his 400 yards. I mean, that's
a lot of passes.
It's a lot of passes. And 9 times out of 10, if you throw the ball 63 times, you're not going to win.
But you think with that many injuries they had coming in, Stephon Diggs left the game due to cramps.
Yeah, but he played the majority.
You know, I think they caught them also, you know, you coming down to Miami and with that weather. I think I don't know. Okay.
Well, here's what I say.
I didn't see last week coming at all.
Well, here's what I say.
And Jalen Waddle still had another 100 yards this past week.
They were missing all sorts of guys defensively. Offense was intact. I think they frustrated Josh the whole game.
Well, and then you think about this. Like, you know, how long has that coach been there? 4 or 5 years? And
McDermott?
Yeah, and they still don't have a running game.
No.
At all.
I don't think they want one.
They got Josh, but we know and we see like to me the Bills seem like they're a front running team. If they can get you out of there in 2-3 sets, to use a tennis analogy, but if you can drag them into a 5th set, like the Chiefs did, you know, obviously like the Dolphins did, without a running game to salt the game. And your running game cannot be your quarterback. You saw what happened to Cam. You see what happened to these quarterbacks who run. When they get deeper into the season, a lot of times they're beat up, they're nicked up in ways that, you know, don't allow them to perform like they did earlier in the season. Even look at the way that Jalen Hurts is performing. He started off last year the same exact way.
Yeah.
Now, he making a lot more throws from the pocket than he did last year. He's fitting in some tight windows. Yeah. So hopefully that will allow him to perform at this level for deeper into the season.
Yeah, you have to preserve yourself. And I mean, you called me over the weekend and you were like, you know, Kyler Murray's not running enough. But I think to your point, if you want to play 17 games, especially because he's slight, you can't just be out here reckless. And I said that about Josh. Like Josh, because he's big.
You can't have no rushing yards, man.
Huh?
And that's what you do.
Well, but to your point, their only chance of sustained success is him being on the field, and he's got to protect himself. So maybe the game plan was like not to run as much, but I think like Josh better be careful. Like, and go talk to Cam.
Well, and then the style, okay, because that's
because he's dropping his shoulder on guys, like Cam was.
Like you gotta get out of bounds. You gotta slide. I saw Kyler Murray against what did they play this past weekend? It wasn't the Raiders. It was the Rams. Yeah, and the first down was right there. And he slid like 7 yards.
Yes.
I was like, what are you doing? Yeah. Don't get the first down. But to your point, he's
stay out of harm's way.
Self-preservation. I'm trying to enjoy all this money.
Yeah. No, for real. And I'm trying to stay out here. It's a long season. Interesting because I have the same team on surprises and disappointment. The Chicago Bears. They're surprising in the sense that if you open a season with 49ers, Green Bay, sandwiched with the Texans, you think maybe 1 and 2 or possibly 0-3. We're 2-1 coming out of those three. So surprising that we've done that. Disappointing in the sense that Justin Fields has been awful and he's been regressing. And obviously, if you watch football, you know that new system, and it's very similar. The struggles that he's having are very similar to what Russ is having in Denver. And they run this basically the same system. Both of those guys. We have the quarterback coach from Green Bay. They have the offensive coordinator from Green Bay. So they're running, Hackett and Luke Getsy in Chicago, who's a quarterback coach up there. And they're running effectively the same system. And if you remember, even when they got in there to Green Bay, Rodgers was frustrated because you're not allowed to get in and out of plays, not a lot of checks. It was like, run what we send in, and it's a structured offense.
Yeah, Rodgers 26 touchdowns that first year with Hackett.
And this is
like his lowest.
Yes, and this is Rodgers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so these other guys who are used to, are probably at their best, both Russ and Fields playing off schedule, playing a little bit of a.
But that's what Russ did that last drive.
Right.
I'm doing this.
I got to do what I got to do.
I'm doing my Russ thing right now. We got to win. As opposed to the first game.
Yes.
Right? Where he didn't do a lot of Russ stuff. And then you came for the 60, 70-yard field goal and you lose.
And then, And so you're seeing the similar type of struggles and like the timing and the whole nine. And I'm just incredibly disappointed because I think it's exposing Fields to pressure, outside pressure that I don't think is going to help him. And I'm frustrated because I'd rather be, and this might sound crazy, we're not a threat to win the Super Bowl. We're not even really a threat to go to the playoffs. What's way more important to me as a Bears fan is to see two things: change in culture and improvement at the quarterback position. I don't want to win 8 or 9 games, just miss the playoffs, and my quarterback, I still have questions about whether or not he's – I'd rather go 3-14 and know that, damn, he kept us in games. You know, the culture's changed. Those are only two things I'm watching for this year. And a lot of the knocks on him coming out of college are really exposed in this offense. He's not throwing guys open. He's not – it's like you got to read and you got to throw in. And in coming from college, and you brought this up a lot, you know, if he saw the throw, he could hit it. You know, he could spin it with anybody.
The windows were wide.
When the windows are wide. And so if you're going to play with wide open windows, you need to have that, like what Lamar gets, what Jalen gets. They have systems that help to create that from a scheming standpoint. If you're just asking him to stand in the pocket and then see the field and take a check down, this is over. Like I said, he's like, I got told somebody the other day, he's playing more like W.C. Fields than Justin Fields.
But we talked about this when the Bears hired the defensive coordinator from the Colts. You know,
Matt Eberflus.
Eberflus. Yeah, I didn't understand the hire, particularly again when you have Eric Bieniemy out there, a guy who had this specific style of quarterback and was able to help get him to a MVP, Super Bowl, and has had him playing or been a part of the culture and been a part of the play calling and development of a guy like that. And you bring in, so you got this guy Fields who didn't have the first year the numbers that you would have wanted. So the second year you go, okay, you got an opportunity to bring in an offensive minded coach, somebody that has been down this road before with a new quarterback. And I would have thought that they would have brought someone else in who had dealt with this type of athlete before at this specific position. So, you know, as much as I didn't like Fields coming out of Ohio State, you know, I want to see him win. And I thought that you guys had an opportunity to, just like, I mean, I wanted, and that's no secret, I want to be enemy for the Falcons. That's why I jumped out the window on him. Well, it had an opportunity to bring me back. I was already out. But the point that I'm making is that, you know, you want to, a lot of times, like you were saying, it's the culture and the coaching, particularly when you have a new quarterback. Okay, so if you got a guy like Aaron Rodgers, he may not like what you got going on. Yeah. He may not like, I'm so good that I can still be productive. I can churn out a 10-win season, you know, sleepwalking.
Right.
But when you have a young athlete like Fields or a young quarterback, I think that it's ultra important to be able to to surround him with the leadership that he needs to be successful.
Here's where I am on Eberflus. I like Eberflus because of the culture change. We traded away most of our talent. When we've released them or whatever. Allen Robinson was probably the best wide receiver. Khalil Mack was the best defensive player. They're no longer on the team. But I feel like we play cleaner football. Less mistakes. Guys play hard. And it's the reason we're 2-1. I like the culture element of it. But to your point, I don't think they have the investment in Fields because they didn't draft him. And so they're going, this is the system we want to run. And if you can't run it, we'll find someone who will. I think that's the play that they're making, as opposed to what you have with Lamar, what you have with Jalen Hurts, what you have with Burrow, what you have with Herbert, where they're going, we're going to create the system that best takes advantage of what you're doing. It's like, here's the thing where Fields flashed last year. Great deep ball thrower, extremely accurate down the field. Where he gets into trouble is sort of the quick reads, having to throw guys open, like underneath. And he just has problems with it. This system plays mostly sideways and not vertical. He's a vertical quarterback. Play action, get the ball down the field. We did it a few times last year, and it worked. One of the things that I like is Pro Football Focus has us as the second rated run O-line. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly with young players. We got a 5th-round rookie playing left tackle. We have undrafted free agent, 3rd-year undrafted free agent playing center. We have a 2nd-year 5th-round pick playing right tackle. And we have a 2nd-year guard on the right. And they're running the ball really, really well. Pass blocking, not so much. But I will say this, in fairness to the line, Fields is holding the ball. He's holding the ball. Mm-hmm. Like, there's times when you go back, it's like the way the system works is you drop back, you hit that back foot, ball's got to come out.
Anticipate.
And he's trying to see it.
Then throw it.
And most times it's not there. And then they figured out how to rush him to kill that run, to kill him from running. So all that to say, the Bears are both on my surprise and my disappointment, but that's mostly about Justin Fields. Just Justin Fields is disappointing me. The only other team I had on there that's disappointing, I do want to point out the Chargers, because I think the Chargers get a lot of love because of Herbert and the way he plays, but they don't win. They never win. No, and they used to blame that shit on Anthony Lynn. They haven't won no more than they did. No, they won less.
They be losing.
They do. They're 1-2.
They do.
So everybody's enamored with the quarterback play, and I guess at some point it will win them some games. Not yet.
Yeah, they'll win this coming up week, I think. They play the Texans, so they should get a win there.
Yeah, but you thought them at Jacksonville.
Point, yes. Hey, Jacksonville got that stick.
Yeah, no, Jacksonville's on my list of surprises too. And Trevor Lawrence is playing like the draft pick that we thought he would.
And to their credit, they surrounded him with weapons now. You know, they brought in Kirk, and Kirk is delivering. He's catching balls. And they got this 1-2 punch, really more of a one punch with James Robinson. Well,
that's one of the things I just want to speak on that real quick. One of the things that I love about sports is that, and we talked earlier in the show, we opened the show talking about competition. James Robinson, I believe, was a 7th round or undrafted free agent. Travis Etienne was a 1st round, maybe 2nd round pick.
It's his teammate under center.
Yeah. And they got him because of that familiarity. He was a big time recruit, all of that. And James Robinson could have did the thing that some athletes do. Man, you ain't gonna let him play.
Send me up the field. Send me up the field.
But you know what? He came back from an Achilles. I think it was an Achilles or ACL.
Some very terrible.
And he came back and he competed, and he has literally put.
And he's breaking the long runs.
Yes,
he's breaking the 30+ yard runs.
And you know what he's doing? He's keeping his competition on the bench, and that's what it's about. Sometimes when you got to take somebody's position or you got to compete, if coaches want to win, and they want to put the best players out. Now, if it's equal, they're going to put the guy on the field with the more draft equity. The higher draft.
Well, that's what ownership wants to see.
Because but James Robinson kept it, and they ain't even splitting carries.
No, that's over with.
The only thing is like they're giving him a breather, and then Etienne comes in. That's it.
And they're reaping the benefits in the form of not only rushing production but W's.
Yep.
Which is going to keep it the same until unless he get hurt again.
I love that. I really love that. Shout out to James Robinson for being a competitor and being one of those guys. And it's one of those examples that they can't count you out. Don't let an injury count you out. Don't let where you was drafted count you out. Don't let how many stars you had coming out of high school count you out. Just play your game, play ball. You know what I mean? And you do what you got to do. And if you hard and you believe you hard, it ain't about the talking. It ain't about the jaw jacking. It ain't about who too small. None of that. Play ball and you'll get there. And I think he's an example of what it means to compete. Like I said, we got the fantasy show coming tomorrow night or coming Wednesday night, 9:00 Eastern. And then we have the fan base show Friday morning, 9:30 on the Fanbase app. Download the Fanbase app. Come in to statlinesmatter presents, and you can come in and hear all the conversation that we have every Friday, but this Friday particularly about the Brett Favre situation.
We gonna get his ass.
Hey, and we gonna be. Listen.
Well, we gonna skin you.
Just like you try to skin us. Anyways, on behalf of my partner here, Rob Hunter Jr., I am Mark Stewart. This is StatlinesMatter.
Bad boy. I ain't come for games. Say it to my face. Say it to my face. I ain't come for games. Say it to my face. Say it to my face.